The MSB license is different in the sense that it covers both crypto and fiat, and it's a licensed entity for handling fiat. So this is kind of, you can think of this as an upgraded license from a VASP license. So we have the VASP license already, but the VASP license doesn't give us the right to directly offer our customers fiat accounts, while the MSB license does. So lending and borrowing, the security audit is finished now. So we're effectively through the entire process. We're now looking for liquidity providers for lending and borrowing. We see that there's going to be a lot of assets coming into the lending and borrowing protocol from the perspective of traditional crypto, ADA, MELD, ETH, AVAX. What we're looking for now is for stablecoin providers. So we support USDT and USDC. And so we're looking to bring on as much of these stablecoin providers as we can, because we've seen already now that there's going to be a huge demand for stablecoins for people to be able to borrow against their crypto, and they can borrow stablecoins.
What's up, Ada Nation? Welcome to Dapp Central, your home for everything blockchain and crypto. I'm your host here, Fareed. As a part of today's video, we're sitting down with the founder of MELD, Ken Olling, to discuss some brand new banking partner announcements, their recent security audit, as well as the upcoming Mainnet launch. Now, for any of you that have not heard about MELD, I've covered them very greatly here on the channel. Go ahead and leave the links to those specific videos down below. There's also a huge playlist breaking down all the ins and outs of this lending and borrowing protocol that initially started here within Cardano. That said, let's go ahead and bring up today's guest as we get ready to dive straight on into updates with respect to MELD. Ken, it's been a while. Welcome back up. How are you?
Hey, Farid. It's great to be here. It's good to see you again. It has been a while, hasn't it?
It has been. It has been. It's crazy how quickly time flies, especially in a space that's ever evolving.
Crypto years, right? It's like dog years.
It sure is. So again, a lot of people already know you. We're going to skip, I think, a lot of the intro stuff here.
Yeah.
I'd really love to maybe just dive straight on in. So
please.
There's been a recent announcement around a brand new banking partner out of Canada. What are you able to share with us with respect to what they do and how this fits into MELD?
Sure. First of all, it's not a partner. So what this is, and you'll have seen it already in press, is MELD has acquired a financial institution in Canada. They have a license called an MSB license, money service business license. It's not quite akin to a banking license, but it's similar to an EMI license here in Europe. So we completed that acquisition about a month ago. Everything is now finalized in regard to it. It's called BitPay. Canadian licenses are a little bit different than what you see here in Europe and in other places, in that Canadian licenses do not afford you the right to operate in Canada. They afford you the right to operate on a global basis. And these MSB licenses, they have different classes connected to them. They have 5 classes in total. I can't recite all 5 of them, but I can tell you that the one that we have, the only class it doesn't include is crowdfunding. So it includes the ability to handle crypto, payments, fiat, several other things. I don't remember exactly what. But so this has been a long time coming. I know. We've gone back and forth in several different jurisdictions to try and unwind this and get this. So I'm really happy to announce the acquisition of BitPay and the fact that we finally have a money business license, and we're able to handle this. So what that means on a grander scale is, now that we've made the acquisition, we need to integrate the company into our organization and integrate their technology or their licenses and services into our organization.
So just to make sure I understand, this is an actual acquisition of
Correct.
the company, not a partnership.
Correct. Not a partnership. We've acquired BitPay. Correct.
That's huge, and that's impressive. Now, you guys have already earned your VASP, or your virtual asset service provider license, I believe, which has come out of Lithuania, one of the first platforms to do that. Can you explain what the similarities or differences between both of those are? And
Yeah.
again, what opportunities this opens up from a Canadian perspective?
So a virtual asset service provider license, or a VASP license, is a license specifically allowing you to handle crypto on behalf of other people. So if you want to run a centralized exchange, you have to have a VASP license. So this is the license that we have in Lithuania. This is the one that affords us the ability to on-ramp and off-ramp fiat to crypto. We have partnerships with our VASP license, with providers that give us access to fiat rails, sort of fiat accounts. These are the things that we're now integrating into our mobile wallet, and we're doing testing on. So the VASP license is a license that is owned by MELD, meaning that we're allowed to operate in Europe, and we're allowed to operate, we're allowed to operate in many countries outside of Europe as well, but we're allowed to handle crypto. The MSB license is different in the sense that it covers both crypto and fiat, and it's a licensed entity for handling fiat. So this is kind of, you can think of this as an upgraded license from a VASP license. So we have the VASP license already, but the VASP license doesn't give us the right to directly offer our customers fiat accounts, while the MSB license does.
So, if I'm not mistaken, is this the first time that you guys have a license dealing with fiat?
Correct. This is the one we've been trying for well over like a year and a half, 2 years. We've been working on this with several partners. It's very, very difficult. It's become easier now that the ETF has come into play. Prior to the Bitcoin ETF coming live, it was incredibly difficult because the financial industry was very allergic to anything related to crypto type products, because of, BlockFi and FTX and Celsius and Three Arrows Capital and all the mess that happened there. That's kind of water under the bridge now when it comes to the financial world, and they have come back and are now fully embracing crypto, or more or less fully embracing. There's still some parts of the traditional financial world that are very anti, but by and large, it's a much more positive environment to operate in. And now with this acquisition of the MSB, it means that we are a licensed entity, not just relying on a business relationship with other licensed entities. So what we learned when we had our first sort of failure of getting a license with ConnectPay was that relying on a single pipe is a very foolish approach. We can't say that there's not going to be another FTX, right? We can't say that the traditional financial world is not going to react negatively to some sort of problem in the space and do the same thing they did before, which is cut off the connections. So what we learned was never rely on a single point. So we've built our own banking stack so that we connect the MSB license to our banking stack, so we own the customer, right? We can provide the fiat services directly, but we will still rely on several other payment rails connected to our banking stack. So if one of them decides to fail, or decides to shut down, or goes out of business, whatever it may be, if one of them goes away, we have a failover, we have a fail safe to go on to these other ones. So we're not changing our strategy. We're continuing along this path of kind of decentralized banking connections, having multiple banking connections. The difference is, what we had before was we had the crypto license, and we relied on other people to own the customer relationship. Right now with MSB, we can own the customer relationship.
Got it. Now, you mentioned a key acronym that I also want to quickly touch on here just to provide some clarity, and that's the EMI.
Yeah.
Again, can you explain maybe what the similarities or differences are between the EMI and this MSB?
By and large, they're about the same. I can't go into the sort of the technical or kind of regulatory differences between them. The biggest difference, there's two big differences. One is EMIs are not allowed to handle crypto. or they're not. That's not true. They're frowned upon from handling crypto. So most jurisdictions want one organization to handle only crypto and another organization to only handle fiat. That's not the case in Canada, right? Second, as a general rule, European EMIs prefer to only operate with European customers, with customers inside of the EU or EEA. MSB license allows you to operate with customers on a global basis, obviously outside of the United States. The United States is its own little island when it comes to financial regulations. But outside of the US, MSB licenses afford us access to the planet.
So it sounds like it might even be a little bit more powerful, for lack of better terms, compared to the EMI in terms of what it allows for you to do. I do have one other question,
Yeah.
which is about the implementation process, et cetera. So with an acquisition like this, how long does it take before we're actually able to see the fruits of the acquisition?
That I'm not exactly sure because it's kind of backlogged. We're not going to stop where we currently are. We're not going to stop the current sort of deployment plans, which are just about finished, and we're kind of effectively doing testing on them now. We have some small adjustments that need to get made. We're not going to stop that in order to go back and work on the EMI. We're going to launch what we have. We're going to deploy what we have. Once we're live, then we can have, as a parallel process, the integration of the Bit2Pay MSB license into the MELD ecosystem.
Thank you. Any last thoughts when it comes to that before we switch topics and talk about the mainnet launch?
No, just that I know that there's been a lot of frustration in the community in regards to this, there's been rumors about me being afraid to, sign contracts to get these licenses, which is just ludicrous. So it's been a long time coming. There have been lots of challenges along the way, but we are finally there. It's across the line. It's on our cap table. We own the company, and yeah, I'm very happy to have that chapter of MELD kind of behind us now.
I'm sure the community is just as happy as you are. And I want to just take a moment to give you some kudos because you're one of the few founders that actually joins me for interviews, but you don't hold back, right? So when we're planning for content, there's never anything that's off topic. And I can appreciate that because, again, sometimes when I do bring founders on the channel, there's specific topics that they want to avoid or maybe, not necessarily discuss. So I definitely can appreciate that from a content creator's perspective. Okay, you've talked about lending and borrowing. That's the next topic. Where are we at?
So lending and borrowing, the security audit is finished now. So we're effectively through the entire process. We're now looking for liquidity providers for lending and borrowing. We see that there's going to be a lot of assets coming into the lending and borrowing protocol from the perspective of traditional crypto, ADA, MELD, ETH, AVAX. What we're looking for now is for stablecoin providers. So we support USDT and USDC. And so we're looking to bring on as much of these stablecoin providers as we can, because we've seen already now that there's going to be a huge demand for stablecoins for people to be able to borrow against their crypto, and they can borrow stablecoins. So yeah, the biggest challenge is now over with in regards to building out the technology and deploying the technology. And again, what we're doing now is just testing. We're bringing on the liquidity providers. We have a whole bunch of partners that we have signed up to participate in relationship to this as part of ETHCC that we went to in Brussels last week. So it's moving in the right direction. We're being a bit cautious to make sure that everything, all of our T's are crossed and I's are dotted in regards to the deployment, but we're there now. It's all done, and now it's just a matter of stitching it all together, and not stitching it together, to deploying it and making sure that it works in collaboration with the other components like the liquidation bot and the DEX.
Noted. Thank you. Now, while we're on this topic, we have to talk about the security audit. If I'm not mistaken, that was done by a platform called Audit One. You guys
Yes.
received a wonderful score. So, just taking a look across the board, and I'll get this up on screen, a 96% security score, 97% quality score, and then 92% documentation. Do you mind breaking down the good, but then any potential findings that you guys had to remediate or address?
There's always bugs you're going to find. These systems are pretty complicated. What I can say is, we've had several audits from several different audit providers in the past across multiple chains. And I can say that our experience with Audit One, in regards to the quality of the audit, was by far the best. They were really on point, super sharp, did a great job in regards to sort of diving into the code. They gave us a lot of feedback in regards to various different bugs, and you can see they've just published a video that outlines all of the issues that they found that we have addressed. So we've had an excellent experience with Audit One. We'll use them again, most definitely. And I'm just really happy with the results. I'm happy with the way that they've conducted their audit and their professionalism, as engineers' professionalism.
Got it. Now, are there any plans, just for redundancy, on getting additional security audits? And then maybe what's sort of like the game plan as the protocol matures? There's V2s, V3s, et cetera. Do you plan on, including other people, including future audits? What are maybe just your thoughts, generally
Yeah.
speaking,
So
around security?
over time, we will obviously we'll get everything audited before we launch it. But we'll probably have a bug bounty at some point in the future, just to sort of for extra security purposes. And we're looking at different ways to incorporate insurance as well. So that's another area that we're trying to figure out what we can actually do in that space. So we'll for every version of the lending and borrowing protocol, we will get it audited.
Got it. Now let's maybe pivot back over to lending and borrowing very quickly here. What I'd like to maybe talk about are some of the supply caps that will be put on users on the protocol on launch day. So again, once the platform launches, given the amount of liquidity that's available, the amount of users, et cetera, there's going to have to be some caps, as I understand. Do you mind explaining why we need a supply cap, why we need a borrow cap, and then why we have to monitor the LTV value so closely, especially as the protocol launches?
Sure. So the loan to value ratio, the amount that you can borrow against an asset, and the borrow cap and supply cap, they have a relationship to liquidations. So because we're over collateralized lending and borrowing, it means that you never actually go into debt. Your asset is, if you default, if you get liquidated, you don't default. So all that happens is you forfeit your collateral and then you keep the asset that you've borrowed. What this means, though, is you have to make sure that either on centralized exchanges, on other exchanges, or on your own DEX, you have enough liquidity, enough depth in the liquidity in order to be able to liquidate different situations. So, for example, let's say somebody has borrowed ETH, or they've supplied ETH and they've borrowed dollars, and the price of ETH goes way down and they get liquidated. Then the person who liquidates them is effectively going to pay back the loan. They'll pay back the dollars and they will get the ETH in exchange. And that ETH has a premium attached to it, like a 5% premium attached to it. And so in order for this to work and for it to be financially feasible for people to liquidate, they need to be able to take that ETH and convert it into USDT or USDC or something like that. So they can do it on centralized exchanges. They can do it on sort of Ethereum or on Base. They'll also be able to do it on MELD. But the size of those liquidity pools determines how much you can actually borrow against, right? In the case of ETH, the pools are very deep. So you can borrow a lot. The loan to value ratio is pretty high, and I'll pull it up right now. 1 second, just so that I don't get it wrong. So ETH loan to value ratio is 60%. So you can borrow 60% of the value of Ethereum when we launch on the lending and borrowing on MELD. In regards to the lending and borrowing cap, so the supply cap is $10 million worth of ETH, and the borrow cap is $10 million. So you can supply, in total, you'll be able to supply $10 million worth of ETH, and in total, you'll be able to borrow $10 million worth of ETH. And so these numbers are not set in stone. These numbers are changed, especially in the beginning. We'll be changing them on a weekly basis, depending on how things sort of play out. And so the reason why you have these things is to make sure that your system doesn't go too far onto the high risk side of your platform, because if the farther you go into the high risk area, the more you're risking what's called a cascading liquidation event. And what that means is somebody gets liquidated, and then that person takes that, for example, that person takes that ETH and they sell it on the MELD blockchain. When they sell it on the MELD blockchain, that brings down the price of ETH, which in turn causes more people to be liquidated. And then that ETH in turn is sold onto the market, and it brings down the price of ETH. And you have this vicious cycle that happens. So these are some of the characteristics you see in these flash crashes on Ethereum mainnet, where you'll see something like ETH go down 15% in a few hours. The result of that is not always, but is often related to a cascading liquidation event. So we don't want these, and we don't like these. A cascading liquidation event is very dangerous, and especially in the early days of the protocol, we want to make sure that our protocol is safe. Over time, as more liquidity comes to the chain, we'll be able to up those more and more and more. And like I said, we'll be checking on them on a weekly basis. And so there's a direct correlation between how much liquidity is in your DEX or on a centralized exchange and how much you can actually do in regards to lending and borrowing. And so to give you an example in regards to MELD, the loan to value ratio is 20%. So you can borrow 20% of the value of MELD in the beginning. So again, this is just in the beginning. This will change, and it will continue to change over time. As more liquidity comes in, as things stabilize, it'll go from 20 to 30 to 40 to 50 to 60 to, it'll get up there. But in the beginning, we don't want to wreck our users. We don't want to wreck our holders. And we need to kind of build up to get there. And so in regards to supply cap, the supply cap initially will be $8 million. So in total, you'll be able to supply, not you, but everybody will be able to supply up to $8 million. And again, this is not a hard fixed thing. This will change on a weekly basis. And as we get more liquidity and the system settles in, then that will increase and increase and increase. In regards to the borrow cap, on MELD, you will not be able to borrow MELD. And so the reason for that is that primarily the only use case or the only reason you borrow MELD is to short it. And because we're brand new and we're building the system and we have to build up the resilience, we have to build up the liquidity on the platform, we're not allowing people to short MELD. So over time, again, that will change. We will have borrowing caps as well for people to be able to borrow against it, and they will be able to short it over time or use it for whatever they want. But initially, you'll be able to supply MELD and generate a yield, but you'll not be able to borrow MELD. And we'll sort of monitor it on a regular basis, and then hopefully sooner rather than later, we'll make it possible to borrow.
Got it. And thank you. I just want to maybe just take a moment to plug in the MELD testnet. So for anybody who hasn't gotten an opportunity to play around with it, you can go ahead and check it out. I'll leave the link to it down below, but it's available at testnet.meld.com. Everything that MELD is basically, or not MELD, Ken has just broken down about MELD. You guys can go ahead and check out here on your own. So that's lending, borrowing, staking, and then obviously just getting access to their multi-chain wallet covering the biggest blockchains available right now. Interesting piece that you just mentioned there about the borrowing of MELD. Let's say maybe I want to over leverage myself and try to long MELD, right? By putting up MELD, borrowing it, but not necessarily dumping it in order to short. Um, it sounds like that'll be a possibility, but not at least at the very beginning. Is
Yeah,
that correct?
not in the beginning. Eventually you'll be able to, but in the beginning, the only thing you can do is use MELD as collateral and then borrow other assets. So, and that's what most people want to do anyways. A lot of people, from day one have said, I have a lot of MELD. Especially I've been able to accumulate in the past couple of weeks because the MELD price has been really, really low. So now I have the ability to supply MELD and I can borrow USDT, I can borrow ADA, I can borrow ETH, I can borrow anything I want against that MELD and generate a yield from the MELD, but then also, go back and get other assets. So become a bit more liquid.
Got it. So you can still supply it, you just can't borrow it yet. So I just want to make sure
Correct.
that there's a
Correct.
clear distinction for the viewers and listeners here.
Absolutely.
Um, okay, thank you for that. Let's move into the next topic, which are project partners. You've just discussed USDT, USDC, and other sort of stable coins joining the MELD ecosystem. We've also officially heard about the Azomi DEX, and we've actually heard from the team that's building the Azomi DEX. Do you mind breaking down any additional partners? If I'm not mistaken, you guys have also partnered up with different companies. So we have BitLocust. There was Swarm for
Yeah.
digitization of
RWAs.
exactly. Do you mind talking about just the relationship of the Melt ecosystem right now?
Yeah, so I think this week we're going to be releasing an ecosystem map. We have about 30 partners or 30 projects launching on the MELD chain. I think the one that I'm the most excited about is a DEX screener. So, when when Azomi launches, you really, if you're kind of a trader, you kind of live in a DEX screener more than you live on a DEX. And so I can't name the screener. We're just finalizing the details on the contract, but probably this week or next week we'll be able to announce the name of the screener. So we'll have one of that sort of that core components to be able to trade assets on a chain, which is the DEX screener. And I'm most excited about that because I'm a trader. And if I don't have a DEX screener, then you're kind of in the dark. You saw this in the beginning when Sunday launched and MinSwap and Muesli Swap, there wasn't a DEX screener on Cardano. And so it kind of puts you a little bit in the dark. And so when Cardano finally got a DEX screener, then that kind of opened it up and made it much more of a mature trading platform.
Noted. Any other potential partners that you guys are adding to the ecosystem that you can share with us?
Additional ones, I can't talk about any off the top of my head, but I can tell you that there's just a whole laundry list of them. I think we've got like more than 10 that are either launching on the chain, working with the lending and borrowing protocol, kind of extending it, coming in and sort of augmenting the Azomi DEX. So there's a whole bunch of them, but the one I can't really talk about them until we've finalized. It's not finalizing the contracts. The contracts have been finalized. It's finalizing the marketing agreement, and sort of everybody has kind of pre-approved the public announcements.
Got it. Now, I mentioned the partnership with Swarm earlier. I'd maybe love
Yeah,
to dive into this one a little bit further and then also Zomi. But maybe just starting off with this, how do you see Swarm being integrated? It sounds like, again, there's going to be the opportunity to take RWAs and borrow against them, right?
correct.
Directly from the MELD platform. Anything else that you can share about expectations for this partnership or collaboration?
So what I can say is that when you start working with these things, you start to understand the limitations on how these things work, or on not how they work, but the limitations in regards to making, how do I explain this? Let me use the RWAs as an example. So let's say Swarm has already deployed their contracts on the MELD blockchain. They're going to support the MELD blockchain. We'll get RWAs. Let's say you want to buy NVIDIA, right? What you would normally do in the crypto space is you would, buy ETH, and then you would either you would trade it on a DEX, right? That's what you would do. The problem is that an RWA doesn't work on a DEX. It can't work on an automated market making system, right? On a constant product model, it doesn't work because RW, in the case of NVIDIA, right? You want to talk about deep pools. I mean, there's it's like $1 billion, $1 trillion pool depths, right? But that pool is not available in the crypto space. You have to get like oracles that are pulling off of the traditional financial world to get price discovery. You don't want a situation where you have NVIDIA stock on a DEX, and then because somebody bought or sold it, then it's going to get, the prices can get out of whack, and then you get yourself into a difficult situation. So for RWAs, you really need to have an order book DEX. So we're working with a partner. I can't give you the name yet, but we're working with them to try and get an order book DEX onto the MELD blockchain so that we can offer RWAs through that order book. Because in the case of an order book, you can specify the price of the asset. In an AMM, you cannot specify the price of the asset. And so then we can connect to a, New York Stock Exchange price feed, and you know exactly how much that everybody is going to be paying for the NVIDIA stock. And so when you start getting into the details of RWAs, you realize they don't operate quite the same the way that traditional finance or traditional crypto does. We're working on that. We're collaborating with them on a very close-knit basis. We will see RWAs sort of available on MELD in the near future. And as soon as possible, we want to be able to support all of the RWAs that Swarm has in our lending and borrowing protocol.
Thank you for that update. And I think this opens up a brand new opportunity to attract a new type of trader or a new type of investor within the MELD ecosystem, right? So again, really exciting to be able to hear about the potential or the opportunities that will be available for anybody who's operating on the MELD blockchain. Now let's quickly pivot to Azomi. So that's also been another product where there's been a lot of anticipation, a lot of hype. The first DEX, I believe, launching on the MELD protocol. I think there's a lot of opportunity for them as well, right? I mean, you mentioned Sunday Swap not too long ago, in sort of the influx of attention, liquidity, opportunity that they had coming their way back in 2022. What are your expectations for Azomi? And maybe if you can just kind of set the tone here for what the community should also be expecting.
I mean, the community, what they can expect, we're going to be deploying a whole bunch of like core pairs onto Azomi when it goes live, typical kind of MELD USDT, MELD ETH, MELD ADA, MELD AVAX, etc. There'll be other pairs as well, ADA, USDT, and we've currently kind of opened up for people to be liquidity providers. So if anybody's interested in being an LP, then please hop on one of the official MELD Telegram chats and sort of reach out. We'll put you into an early LP group where you can kind of jump in with LP before the thing goes actually live. And then you'll be able to sort of give it a go and, try it out. Beyond that, I mean, the only thing you can really look forward to is Memecoins. I mean, I've already been approached by lots of people who want to launch Memecoins on Azomi, which I think is going to be a blast. It's going to be really fun to have Memecoins on the MELD blockchain. And then, of course, many of these projects, like Swarm, will be launching their token on the MELD blockchain and will be tradable in the Azomi DEX. We're working with some other companies as well. There's an AI project that we're discussing with in regards to launching on the MELD blockchain. They're not a they don't have a token yet, and they're a proof of work blockchain, but they want an ERC20 token. So they're looking at, they're considering coming onto the MELD blockchain. So we're having a lot of discussions with projects to come onto our chain across the spectrum, from gaming and AI to infrastructure to traditional kind of DeFi protocols.
I think you are much more of a degen than a lot of people actually realize. I tuned into some of the Twitter spaces that you were hosting for a while, actually, to listen in about your perspective on just the markets, how you invest, et cetera. But yeah, meme coins, I think, are sort of the it thing for this particular cycle, very similar
Sadly.
to NFTs. Yeah, but I think there's an opportunity. There's an opportunity. So as long as you understand the risk and that you're not there, thinking that it's a long-term hold, for example, something like MELD, then I think you're okay. I think that the
I
biggest
don't know.
thing.
Mhm. I mean, look at the community around Nike, right?
Mhm.
It's a community. It's not just a kind of a random pump and dump kind of thing. There's actually people there. They group together. They enjoy each other's company. They sort of talk shop, etc. So I think that meme coins offer kind of a cultural um, gravity to whatever the meme coin is about, that you saw before in the NFT space, that has kind of, it's still there in NFTs, but it's kind of faded. It's not as exciting as it was. And so I think that, I wrote this article about how I think meme coins are destroying the crypto space right now. It doesn't mean that I'm against meme coins. What I'm against is the fact that, meme coins dominate, maybe, I don't know what the number is. I would expect probably 80 to 90% of the trading volume on any given day. That's where I think it's really, really damaging. But the actual idea of having meme coins out there, I think if you're a chain that doesn't have meme coins, then it's going to be a pretty lonely chain.
Yeah, and what's interesting now is after Solana sort of leading that escapade, right, with platforms like Pump.fun,
Yeah.
Onboard.fun on base, there's actually now been a new platform that's been launched on Cardano doing something very similar, right? And that's being launched by JPEG.store, basically the biggest marketplace in Cardano. So when I saw that, I'm like, holy crap, it's finally coming to Cardano, because for the
What's it
longest,
called?
I think it's called, let me get it up for you here in just a second. I don't want to mess up the name, but it's being launched by JPEG.store, and it's being
Yeah.
built just for quick token launches, really pandering to that community, right? That
Yeah,
meme
yeah,
coin
yeah. I mean,
community.
it's a format, right?
hmm And so it was just eye opening for me to see that, that narrative is now coming to Cardano. And you mentioned Nike earlier. I think that was sort of what triggered it. People realized, okay, this meme stuff can also really take place here in the Cardano ecosystem, which
Mm.
historically tends to be like more serious or like more reserved and
Yeah.
kind of against, or was really
Outside of
trying to
Snack,
avoid
right?
meme coins.
Mm.
Exactly. Okay,
Well,
so
no. And Husky. Outside of Snack and Husky. Don't forget Husky.
Hosky's the OG. That's true.
Yeah, that's right.
And just for reference here, let me actually get this pulled up on screen. This is the platform. It's called Rocket, foolproof token launching and trading by
Fun.
JPEG.store. So I'm looking to get an interview with that team here, hopefully soon, to discuss exactly what their thoughts and plans are around this.
Has it launched?
Okay. Now, I think it's just about to launch. So
Okay.
let me see if I can get you some more details around that. Um, that said, Ken, we've covered quite a bit here. Maybe we close out by discussing the Akamon Bridge.
Yeah,
So I
sure.
remember, 2 years ago, making content about this bridge and being able to actually take your MELD, and I believe it was your ADA as well, from Cardano, wrapping that through the
Mm.
Akamon Bridge, and then getting a wrapped version on the Mumbai testnet for Polygon or Matic.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I think some of the efforts and just direction around that was shifted. You guys, began to focus on lending and borrowing, and that was kind of halted. It seems like things have picked back up on Akamon. Can you give us an update on, where you see this fitting in the grand scheme of things? Because you guys already have a partnership or a bridging partner through Chainport, if I'm not
Mm.
mistaken.
Yeah. So originally, Akamon was intended to be a bridge to bring liquidity in and out of Cardano onto other EVM chains and non-EVM chains. Um, we paused that because we started seeing One Chain and Chainport and Nervos and several others getting very close to launch of their, or what we thought was very close to launch of their bridges. And so we didn't want to sort of duplicate that process because, you know, it's not sort of the core offering. So we put it on the back burner to focus on lending and borrowing and focus on the banking stack and, you know, this kind of stuff. But then when we started the sort of final stretch on lending and borrowing, we saw that there was we made a huge mistake in our architecture around yield boost. So what we had originally planned was you supply an asset into the lending and borrowing. Then we take that asset out and we move it someplace and we stake it and generate a yield. And then when you want that asset back, we then pull it back in to the pool and you can take it. Super complicated, lots of moving parts, higher risk than what we ended up how we ended up solving it. So we saw that rather than do this very complicated gymnastics, it made more sense that when you bridged your asset over, for example, ADA, if you bridged ADA over, then when you bridge it over, the ADA that's sitting on the Cardano side just immediately gets staked, and then you get the yield. So there's no back and forth. There's no all of this kind of stuff. So as soon as your ETH or ADA or Avalanche, USDT, USDC, as soon as any of these assets move onto the MELD blockchain via the Akamon Bridge, they start generating a yield. And so this was too good an opportunity for us to pass up. You know, making natively yielding assets. It's sort of similar to the way that traditional fiat works. You know, fiat has a kind of risk-free rate connected to it. And so what we saw is this opportunity to create a real risk-free rate for all of these primary assets coming onto the MELD blockchain. And so then we decided we went back and we looked at the code that we had, and we saw that we could use most of the code that we had for Akamon to achieve this, and well, at least achieve it for the Cardano side. And then Pepe, our CTO, has a background in bridging, so it wasn't a difficult task to sort of put together the EVM side of the bridging. And so now we have this solution where when you supply your assets into the lending and borrowing, you have this yield floor that's higher than zero. Like any other lending and borrowing protocol out there is going to have a zero yield floor. Ours is higher than a zero yield floor. Depends on a lot of variables, but anywhere from like 1.5%, 2%, all the way up to 7% in regards to base yield. And then when you supply it, if somebody borrows it, then you get a yield on top of that. So it stacks on top of it. And this was just too good an opportunity for us to sort of pass up. And so we dusted off the old code from Akamon and we rebuilt it and reimagined it like this, since we were able to get it done relatively quickly.
Yeah, it's definitely, I think, an opportunity again for you guys to just build out your own feature set or your own banking stack, right? Again, I think there's nothing wrong with working with partners, but when you're in control and actually building all the products, I think it brings a different sense of confidence. And again, for me, seeing what was available back then, seeing how MELD has grown up, transitioned, I was very sad when Akamon was paused. Very
Yeah.
similar to, I want to say it was called Hachi.
Yeah.
Yes. So hopefully that can also get unpaused sooner rather than later.
Hachi's
Because again, I
not going to
think
be on pause. Sorry.
it was a nice idea.
Sorry?
It was a nice idea.
Yeah, it was a nice idea, and it was more the kind of brainchild of the former CTO, which was this idea of creating this audit suite. But it's just too far outside of our core value proposition. So it was abandoned as quickly as I could to focus more on lending and borrowing.
Understood. Now, Ken, there's still a huge list actually of topics that I want to dive into. I think what we're going to do is just set some time aside to have a part two in terms of our discussion, where we discuss potential new advisors. We discuss yield boost in a little bit more detail. your ongoing airdrop campaign. There's also DCube, NFTs, the Dega ISPO. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. That said, we're at about 45 minutes already. I do want to give you an opportunity to maybe give us some closing thoughts, or maybe just highlight anything that we haven't touched on so far that you think is of importance.
No, I mean, just the big thing is what you led with, which is, we've acquired this money license in Canada, which has kind of been the big kind of activity that the big sort of line that we've been trying to cross for the longest time. And I'm super happy that we've been able to do it. It's kind of ironic that it's, happening just as we're launching lending and borrowing, just as we're launching the mobile app and sort of the fiat services on the mobile app. So I guess you could say that it's good timing. I would have much preferred for the timing to have been a year and a half ago, but can't do anything about that. But yeah, I mean, we're working very, very, very hard to get all this stuff across the line and get this out, imminently, and get it into the hands of the people that have done pre-signups.
Understood. I want to thank you again for joining me here today, Ken Oling, founder and chairman of the MELD protocol. Ladies and gentlemen, if you guys would like to find out more about MELD, again, check out that playlist down below, but check out their official website, check out their documentation. This team does a very thorough job of making sure to provide as much documentation around the protocol and the team. So the official link is down below. Again, that's meld.com. Ken, I want to take an opportunity to thank you for your time. I know you're busy, you're trying to make a lot of things happen. And I also want to take a moment to congratulate you, right, on the recent acquisition, a huge
Thanks.
step here for the
Appreciate
MELD
it, Farid.
community. You're welcome. You're welcome. That said, for you, the viewers watching at home, if you guys enjoyed any portion of today's video or interview and you just found it to be helpful, right, please make sure to smash that thumbs up. One of the best ways and one of the easiest ways to support me here as a content creator, and one of the best ways to get the word out about the MELD protocol. If you guys want more content just like this, consider subscribing to Dapp Central. And last but not least, if you have any questions for myself or Ken about the protocol or any of the other topics that we've discussed as a part of today's video, then make sure to leave a comment down below. That said, and as always, we'll actually catch you guys in the second piece. But that said, take care, everybody. Cheers.